everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a dramatic historical episode, the story of Dr.
Richard Jordan Gatling, the man who invented the first successful machine gun, and the surprising reason he did it. In the next few minutes, you'll learn the fascinating story behind this deadly weapon and why its creator believed it could save lives. Stay with me, because this is one mind-blowing piece of history. Buckle up. We're heading back to 1861, in the midst of the Civil War, to find out how this unbelievable story began. The next part of the story is going to blow your mind. So, let's jump right in.
If war were made more terrible, it might tend to keep peace among the nations, mused Dr. Richard J. Gatling, an inventor by trade and a doctor by training. In April 1861, from his Indianapolis workshop, Window Gatling watched a shuddering train unload wounded soldiers from the battlefields of the South. To his horror, he learned that only 3 out of 18 had died of bullets. The rest had perished from disease and infection. That grim calculus haunted him. What if one man could fire as many rounds as 100? Fewer men in combat might mean fewer deaths by bullets or by disease. Thus was born the idea that would change warfare. Gatling would build a machine gun to spray bullets like water from a hose. Richard Gatling, 1818 to 1903, grew up in rural North Carolina amid cotton fields and cotton gins. His father, Jordan Gatling, was a wealthy planter and inventor. In 1835, Jordan patented cotton planting machines, so young Richard inherited a family invention bug. He was educated at a common school and briefly taught school, but his life changed after a brush with death. In 1845, Gatling contracted smallpox and survived only after 2 weeks without medical care. Confronted with illness and mortality, he decided to study medicine. By 1850, he had earned a medical degree from Ohio Medical College. Yet despite being called Dr. Gatling for life, he never built a practice. He preferred machines to medicine. In the 1850s, he moved to St. Louis and then Indianapolis, patenting inventions for farming and industry: rice planters, steam plows, hemp breakers, a rotary lathe maker, and more. The Gatling gun's inventor, Richard J. Gatling, 1818 to 1903, a trained doctor-turned-inventor, Gatling dreamed of reducing human suffering even as he created a machine of war. Gatling saw himself as a benevolent inventor, even joking that by making war more terrible, it might keep nations at peace. When the Civil War erupted, his medical training and inventor's mind converged. He visited army hospitals and camps, and confronted the shocking reality: 2/3 of Civil War deaths were from disease, not bullets. He reasoned that if one weapon could unleash the fire of a whole company, then armies could shrink, and so would the pools of sick men in crowded camps. If a weapon could shoot more bullets, Gatling reasoned, fewer men would be required to fight wars, and thereby fewer would die of bullets or fever. It was a cold calculus, but in Gatling's mind, it was aimed at reducing suffering, not glorifying war.
Soldiers still fought in Napoleonic formations, ranks of men advancing toward each other, a style Gatling found nightmarish. He lay awake imagining the carnage. What if a single gunner could match the fire of an entire volley? Drawing inspiration from his agricultural patents, Gatling sketched a weapon that could spray bullets like water from a garden hose. In just a few weeks in 1861, he completed drawings for the prototype and took them to a machinist. By late 1862, the first Gatling gun had been built. 6 rifle barrels clustered around a central spindle, each with its own bolt and breech mechanism. The operator turned a hand crank. As the barrels rotated, each one fell under a hopper of cartridges, loaded a round, fired it at the bottom of its arc, then ejected the spent case and rotated back up to cool. In effect, the gun cyclically loaded and fired each barrel in turn, achieving a blazing rate of fire without any one barrel overheating. The result was terrifying. In a public test on November 6, 1862, the Gatling gun's 200 rounds per minute rattled like a freight train. Onlookers reported hearing the roar of continuous gunfire 5 miles away. Bullets from the gun cut a 10-inch maple trunk clean in half in under 30 seconds. Gatling patented his invention on November 4, 1862, but the Army's Ordnance Department was skeptical. General James Wolfe Ripley sneered that you can kill a man just as dead with a cap-and-ball smoothbore. Gatling shrugged off the dismissal and quietly had a dozen guns built in Cincinnati. A few were sold at $1,000 apiece to Brigadier General Benjamin Butler, who used them to defend a bridgehead on the James River. Still, in early trials of the Gatling, it was considered a curious artillery supplement, an exotic experiment rather than a must-have weapon.
What made the Gatling gun revolutionary was its mechanical simplicity and speed. Unlike later fully automatic guns, it used no recoil or gas mechanism. It was manually driven by its crank. This meant the gunner controlled the rate of fire and reloading. Faster cranking, more bullets. Each barrel had its own firing mechanism and lock, arranged around a central rotating frame. As one barrel fired at the bottom position, another unloaded at the side, and a third loaded at the top. The process was continuous. Cartridges were gravity-fed from a top-mounted hopper, dropping into place for the next turn. Early models used paper cartridges with percussion caps. Brass cartridges weren't common yet, but by the 1880s, Gatling had adopted brass ammunition and improved feeds to allow sustained bursts. By 1886, his 10-barrel Gatling could shoot over 400 rounds per minute on crank alone. Later, electric-powered Gatlings surpassed 1,000 rounds per minute in tests. This rotating cluster design ended the old problem of a single-barrel machine gun overheating. With 6 or more barrels sharing the work, each cooled off as it rotated. It also avoided any reciprocating bolt or breech that had to move back and forth for every shot. In short, Gatling's invention was the first truly practical rapid-fire gun, a mechanical marvel of the new industrial age.
By the end of the Civil War, Gatling's gun was finally vindicated. An improved model, patented in 1865, fired about 350 rounds per minute, and after a successful demonstration at Fort Monroe, the U.S. Army ordered 100 guns. On August 21, 1866, the War Department officially adopted the Gatling gun as an infantry weapon. Production began under contract in Philadelphia and Hartford. The Gatling gun's debut in combat came too late for Gettysburg, but would shape the Indian Wars, colonial conflicts, and even the Spanish-American War. In the post-war West, cavalry troops and frontier forts employed Gatlings to deter Native American raids. In one Texas skirmish, Lieutenant James Pope's detachment was ambushed by 300 Comanche. Reinforcements wheeled up 2 Gatlings, and the rapid, withering fire scattered the attacking warriors in confusion. At Chief Joseph's surrender in 1877, 600 U.S. soldiers and a Gatling gun ringed the Nez Perce camp. After days of fight, Joseph laid down arms. Even today, it's hard to visualize what it was like. Imagine one man turning the crank while twin rows of barrels pour bullets into an advancing line. The sound, a ceaseless hammering thunder. Overseas, Britain proved eager. Gatling himself took his invention to Europe, and the British Army mounted short-barreled camel guns on dromedaries during campaigns in India and Africa. At Maiwand, Afghanistan, and later in Rhodesia and the Zulu War, Gatling guns devastated massed charges. In 1879, a single Gatling on a hill famously mowed down hundreds of charging Zulu warriors in minutes, contributing to the defeat of a vastly larger force. By the time American troops stormed San Juan Hill in 1898, Gatlings and newer Maxim machine guns worked in tandem to sweep the heights. One observer noted that by this era, Gatlings were integrated into larger Army maneuvers, no longer novelty artillery but infantry support weapons. Yet the very horror Gatling envisioned began to haunt military leaders. At Little Bighorn in 1776, General Custer infamously declined the offer of 3 Gatling guns, fearing they would slow his cavalry and perhaps make the slaughter too one-sided. Could Gatling's gun have saved him? The question lingers. Whatever the answer, the era of hand-cranked rapid fire was drawing to a close. British sailors manning a Gatling gun in the 1870s. Western powers quickly adapted Gatling's invention for colonial wars.